In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, filled with ends of worms and an oozing smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. It had a perfect round door like a porthole, painted green with a shiny yellow brass knob in the exact middle. The door opened onto a tube-shaped hall like a tunnel, a very comfortable tunnel without smoke, with paneled walls and floors tiled and carpeted, provided with polished chairs and lots of pegs for hats and coats. The hobbit was fond of visitors. The tunnel wound on and on, going fairly but not quite straight into the side of the hill. The hill, as all the people from many miles around called it, and many little round doors opened out of it, first on one side, then on another. No going upstairs for the hobbit. Bedrooms, bathrooms, cellars, pantries, there were lots of these. Wardrobes, he had whole rooms devoted to clothes. Kitchens, dining rooms, all were on the same floor, and indeed on the same passage. The best rooms were all on the left-hand side, going in, for these were the only ones to have windows, deep-set round windows looking over his garden and meadows beyond, sloping down to the river. This hobbit was a very well-to-do hobbit, and his name was Baggins. The Bagginses had lived in the neighborhood of the hill for time out of mind, and people considered them very respectable, not only because most of them were rich, but also because they had never had any adventures or did anything unexpected. You could tell what a Baggins would say on any question without the bother of asking him. This is a story of how a Baggins had an adventure, and found himself doing and saying things altogether unexpected. He may have lost the neighbor's respect, but he gained. Well, you will see whether he gained anything in the end. By some curious chance, one morning long ago in the quiet of the world, when there was less noise and more green, and the hobbits were still numerous and prosperous, and Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast smoking an enormous long wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, Gandalf came by. Gandalf, if you have heard only a quarter of what I have heard about him, and I have heard very little of all there is to hear, you would be prepared for any sort of remarkable tale. Tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place wherever he went, in the most extraordinary fashion. He had not been down that way under the hill for ages, not since his friend the old Took died. In fact, and the hobbits had almost forgotten what he looked like. He had been away, over the hill and across the water, on business of his own, since they were all small hobbit boys and hobbit girls. All that the unexpecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff. He had a tall, pointed blue hat, a long grey cloak, a silver scarf over which his long white beard hung down below his waist, and immense black boots.
Good morning.
What do you mean? Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not? Or that you feel good on this morning, or that it is a morning to be good on?
All of them at once. And a very fine morning for a pipe. Out on the doors, into the bargain. If you have your pipe with you, sit down for a while. There's no hurry. We have all day before us.
Very pretty. But I have no time to blow smoke rings this morning. I am looking for someone to share in an adventure that I am arranging. and it is very difficult to find anyone.
Well, you think so? In these parts, we are plain quiet folk, and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. Makes right for dinner. I can't think what anybody sees in them.
Blowing one final smoke ring, Bilbo took out his morning letters and began to read, pretending to take no more notice of the old man. He had decided that he was not quite his sort, and wanted him to go away. But the old man did not move. He stood leaning on his stick, gazing at the hobbit without saying anything, till Bilbo got quite uncomfortable, and even a little cross.
Well, good morning. But we don't have any adventurers here. Thank you. You might try over the hill and over the water.
What a lot of things you use good morning for. Now you mean that you want to be rid of me, and it won't be good till I move off.
No, not at all. Let me see. I don't think I know your name.
Yes, I do know your name, Mr. Bilbo Baggins, and you know mine, though you don't remember I belong to it. I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me. But to think I should have lived to be good morning by Belladonna Took's son, as if I was selling buttons at the door.
Gandalf? Good gracious. Not the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs that fastened themselves and never came off until ordered. Not the fellow who used to tell such wondrous tales at parties about dragons and goblins and giants and rescue princesses. Not the man that used to make such particularly excellent fireworks. I remember those. Old Took used to have them on Midsummer's Eve. Splendid. They used to go up like lilies and snapdragons, fire, hang in the twilight all evening. Hold on. Not the Gandalf who's responsible for so many lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures? Anything from climbing trees to visiting elves or sailing in ships, sailing to other shores? Bless me, life used to be quite... you used to upset things quite badly in these parts. Once upon a time, I beg your pardon, but I had no idea you're still in business.
Oh, well, where else shall I be? All the same, I am pleased to find you remember something about me, though you seem to only remember my fireworks, and that is not without hope. Indeed, for your old grandfather's Took's sake, and for the sake of poor Belladonna, I will give you what you have asked for.
I beg your pardon. I haven't asked for anything.
Yes, you have. Twice now. My pardon, I give it to you. In fact, I will go so far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me, and very good for you. And profitable as well, most likely, if you're to get over it.
Sorry, I don't want any adventures, thank you. Not today. Good morning. But please come to tea any time you like. Why not tomorrow? Come tomorrow. Goodbye.
And with that, the hobbit turned and scuttled inside his round green door, and shut it as quickly as he dared, not to seem rude. After all, wizards are wizards.
Gandalf, in the meantime, was still standing outside the door and laughing long but quietly. After a while he stepped up and with a spike on his staff scratched a queer sign on the hobbit's beautiful green front door. Then he strode away just about the time when Bilbo was finished his second cake and beginning to think that he had escaped adventures very well. The next day he had almost forgotten about Gandalf. He did not remember things very well unless he put them down on his engagement tablet. For example, Gandalf, tea Wednesday. Yesterday he had been too forgetful to do anything of the kind. Just before tea time there came a tremendous ring on the front doorbell, and then he remembered. He rushed and put on the kettle, and put out another cup and saucer, and an extra cake or two, and ran to the door.
Coming.
So sorry to keep you waiting.
When Bilbo opened the door, to his surprise, Gandalf did not stand in front of him, but rather a dwarf with a blue beard tucked into a golden belt, and very bright eyes under a dark green hood. As soon as the door was opened, the dwarf pushed himself inside, as if he had been expected.
Dwalin, at your service.
Bilbo Baggins at yours.
Yeah.
I'm just about to take tea. Pray come in and have some with me.
I could do that.
The dwarf joined Bilbo at the table, and they had not been at the table long. In fact, they had hardly reached the third cake when there came another even louder ring at the bell.
Excuse me. So that wizard has got here at last.
Bilbo made his way over to the door, opening it, and expected to see Gandalf, when instead a much shorter old man stood, with a white beard and a scarlet hood. Another dwarf. He had too hopped inside as soon as the door had opened, just as if he had been invited.
I see they've begun to arrive. Balin, at your service. Thank you. Come along in and have some tea. Come on in. A little beer would suit me better if it's all the same to you. But I don't mind some cake as well. Seed cake if you have it. Oh, of course, yeah. We got lots of that. We have lots of it.
When he got back, Balin and Dwalin were talking at the table like old friends. As a matter of fact, they were brothers. Bilbo plumped down the beer and the cake in front of them, when loud came a ring at the door again.
This time it better be Gandalf. It is for certain this time, there is no doubt.
To Bilbo's disappointment, it was not Gandalf, but instead 2 more dwarves, both with blue hoods, silver belts, and yellow beards. Each of them carried a bag of tools and a spade, and they hopped in as soon as the door opened. Bilbo was hardly surprised at all.
And what can I do for you, my dwarves?
Keely and Feely at your service.
At yours and your families.
Dwalin and Balin are here, I see. Let's join the throng.
The throng? Who? I do not like the sound of that. I really must sit down for a minute. I'll collect my wits, and I'll have a drink. But I do not like the sound of that.
He had only just a sip in the corner, while the 4 dwarves sat round the table and talked about mines and gold and troubles with goblins, and the depredation of dragons, and lots of other things which he did not understand, and did not want to, for they sounded much too adventurous, when
Someone's at the door.
Some 4, I should say. Besides, we saw them along the road beside us at a distance.
the poor hobbit sat down in the hall and put his head in his hands and wondered what had happened, and what was going to happen, and whether they would all stay for supper. Then the bell rang again louder than ever, and he had to run to the door. It was not 4 after all, but 5. Another dwarf had come along while he was wandering in the hall. He had hardly turned the knob before they were all inside, bowing and saying at your service one after another. Dori, Nori, Ori, Oin, and Gloin were their names, and very soon 2 purple hoods, a grey hood, a brown hood, and a white hood were hanging on the pegs, and off they marched with their broad hands stuck in their gold and silver belts to join the others. Already it had become a throng. Some called for ale, and some for porter, and one for coffee, and all of them for cake. So the hobbit was quite very busy for a while. A big jug of coffee had been set in the hearth. The seed cakes were gone, and the dwarves were starting on a round of buttered scones, when they heard a loud knock. Bilbo rushed along the passage, very angry and altogether bewildered. This was the most awkward Wednesday he ever remembered. He pulled open the door with a jerk, and they all fell in, one on top of the other. More dwarves, 4 more, and there was Gandalf behind, leaning on his staff and laughing. He had made quite a dent on the beautiful door. He had also, by the way, knocked out the secret mark that he put there the morning before.
Careful, careful. It's not like you, Bilbo, to keep friends waiting on the mat and then open the door like a popgun. Let's see, who do we have here? Let me introduce Biffer, Boffer, Bomber, and especially Thorin.
Buffer at your service.
Then they hung up 2 yellow hoods and a pale green one, and also a sky blue one with a long silver tassel. This last belonged to Thorin, an enormously important dwarf. In fact, no other than the great Thorin Oakenshield himself, who was not at all pleased at falling flat on Bilbo's mat, with Biffer, Boffer, and Bomber on top of him. For one thing, Bomber was immensely fat and heavy. Thorin indeed was very haughty and said nothing about service, but poor Mr. Baggins said he was sorry so many times that at last he grunted, "Pray not mention it," and stopped frowning.
Now we're all here, and it's quite a merry gathering. I hoped there's something left for the latecomers to eat and drink. What's that? Tea? No, thank you. A little red wine, I think, for me
as well, Mr. Baggins.
And raspberry jam and apple tart. Oh, and mince pie and cheese.
Oh, and if you got it, pork pie and salad.
Aye, and more cakes and ale
Oh, if
and
you're placing
coffee.
an order at
And if
Domino's,
you
I'll
don't
take a
mind,
bacon and
more
cheese
can
have
and
one of those
bacon.
other
take
things
cake.
And
that
if you
I
have an
like.
extra
Oh,
marinara
okay.
sauce, that would be great as well.
Oh, I'll take some coffee as well, if you have that, with a bit of butter stirred in.
Oh, and Bilbo, if you're going out there, put a few eggs on for me. That's a good fellow.
These dwarves seem to know more about what's on the inside of my cupboards than I do. Feeling flustered, Mr. Baggins was beginning to wonder whether a most wretched adventure had not come right into his house. By the time he had got all the bottles and dishes and knives and forks and glasses and plates and spoons and things piled up on big trays, he was very hot and red in the face, and he was annoyed. Unfusticate and be bothered, these dwarfs! Why don't they come and lend me a hand here in the kitchen? They're all in there. They're all feasting and drinking while I'm in here. Lo and behold, there stood Balin and Dwalin at the door of the kitchen, and Fili and Kili behind them, and before he could say knife, they had whisked the trays and a couple of small tables into the parlor and set out everything afresh. Gandalf sat at the head of the party with the 13 dwarves all around, and Bilbo sat on a stool at the fireside, nibbling at a biscuit. His appetite was quite taken away, and trying to look as if this was all perfectly ordinary and not in the least an adventure. The dwarves ate, and talked, and time went on. At last they pushed their chairs back, and Bilbo made a move to collect their plates and glasses. I suppose you'll all stay for supper?
Of course, Master Baggins. And we shan't get through business until late. And we must have music. Now, clear up. Thereupon the 12 dwarves, not Thorin, he was too important and stayed talking to Gandalf, jumped to their feet and made tall piles of all things. Off they went, not waiting for trays, balancing columns of plates, each with a bottle on the top, with one hand, while the hobbit ran after them, almost squeaking with fright.
Wait, please don't. I can help you. Please, wait. That's my grandmother's tea kettle. If you would just hold it by the top, please.
Take the glasses and crack the plates. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. Cut the cloth, tread on the fat, leave the bones on the bedroom mat, pour the milk on the pantry floor. Splash the wine on every door, dump the crotch in a boiling bowl, pound them up with a thumping pole, and when you're finished if they are whole, send them down the hall to roll. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates!
And of course they did none of these things. and everything was cleaned and put away safe as quick as lightning, while the hobbit was turning round and round in the middle of the kitchen trying to see what they were doing. Then they went back and found Thorin with his feet on the fender smoking a pipe. He was blowing the most enormous smoke rings, and wherever he told one to go, it went, up the chimney or behind the clock on the mantelpiece, or under the table or round and round the ceiling, but wherever it went, it was not quick enough to escape Gandalf. Pop! He sent small smoke rings from his short clay pipe straight through each of Thorin's. Then Gandalf's smoke ring would go green and come back over his wizard head. He had a cloud of them already around him, and in the dim light it made him look strange and sorcerous. Bilbo stood still and watched. He loved smoke rings, and then he blushed to think how proud he had been yesterday morning of his smoke rings he had sent up the wind over the hill.
Now for some music. Bring out the instruments.
Keely and Feely rushed for their bags and brought back little fiddles. Dory, Nori, and Ori brought out flutes from somewhere inside their coats. Bomber produced a drum from the hall. Biffer and Boffer went out too, and came back with clarinets that they had left among the walking sticks.
Well, excuse me just a moment. I left mine out on the porch.
Mine's out on the porch as well, Balin. Will you bring it in?
Of course, my king.
Balin came back with instruments as large as himself, including Thorin's harp, which was wrapped in green cloth. It was a beautiful golden harp, and when Thorin struck it, the music began all at once, so sudden and sweet that Bilbo forgot everything else, and was swept away into dark lands under strange moons, far over the water and very far from his hobbit hole under the hill. The dark came into the room from a little window that opened on the side of the hill. The firelight flickered. It was April, and still they played on, while the shadow of Gandalf's beard wagged against the wall. The dark filled all the room, and the fire died, and shadows were lost, and still they played. And suddenly, first one, and then another, began to sing.
Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to find our long forgotten gold. The pines were roaring on the height. The wind
As they sang, the hobbit felt the love of beautiful things made by hands and by cunning and by magic moving through him, a fierce and jealous love, the desire of the hearts of dwarves. Then something Tookish inside him awoke, and he wished to go and see the great mountains, and to hear the pine trees and the waterfalls, explore the caves, and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. Bilbo got up trembling. He had less than half a mind to fetch the lamp, and more than half a mind to pretend to, and go and hide behind the beer barrels in the cellar, and not come out again until all the dwarfs had gone away. Suddenly, he found that all the music and singing had stopped, and they were all looking at him with eyes shining in the dark.
And where are you going, Mr. Baggins?
What about a little more light? Anybody want some more light? That? We like the dark, Mr. Baggins.
Aye, dark for dark business. Yes, and there are many hours before dawn.
Of course, yes, of course. Yes.
Be silent, Bilbo. Let Thorin speak. Gandalf, dwarves, and Mr. Baggins. We are met together in this house of our friend and fellow conspirator, the most and excellent audacious hobbit. May the hair on his toes never fall out. All praise to his wine and ale.
Thorin paused for breath and for a polite remark from the hobbit, but the compliments were quite lost on poor Bilbo Baggins, who was wagging his mouth in protest at being called audacious and, worst of all, a fellow conspirator. Though no noise came out, he was flustered, so Thorin went on.
We are met to discuss our plans, our ways, means, and policies.
We shall soon break before day and start our long journey. A journey which some of us, perhaps all of us, may never return. It is a solemn moment. Our objective is, I take it, well known to all of us. To the estimable Mr. Baggins and perhaps one or two of the younger dwarves, the exact situation at the moment may require a little brief explanation.
This was Thorin's style. He was an important dwarf, and if he had been allowed, he probably would have gone on like this until he was out of breath, without telling anyone there anything that was not known already. But he was rudely interrupted. Poor Bilbo couldn't bear it any longer. At may never return, he began to feel a shriek coming up inside, and very soon it burst out like a whistle of an engine coming out of a tunnel. All the dwarves sprang up, knocking over the table. Gandalf struck a blue light on the end of his magic staff, and in its firework glare the poor little hobbit could be seen kneeling on the hearth rug, shaking like a jelly that was melting. Then he fell on the floor and kept calling out, struck by lightning, over and over again, and that was all they could get out of him for a long time. So they took him and laid him out of the way, on the drawing-room sofa with a drink at his elbow, and they went back to their dark business. A few hours had passed, and Bilbo finally found the strength to rejoin the group in the other room, when he found himself in the middle of a conversation about his position in the company.
Gandalf, see here. We might go up along the river, and so on to the ruins of Dale, an old town in the valley there, and under the shadow of the mountain. But we, none of us, like the idea of the front gate. The rivers run right out of it, and through the great cliffs of the south of the mountain, and out of it comes the dragon too, far too often, unless he has changed his habits.
That will be no good. Not without a mighty warrior, or even a hero. I tried to find one, but warriors are busy fighting one another in distant lands, and in this neighborhood heroes are scarce, or simply not found. Swords in these parts are very blunt, and axes are used for trees and not for fighting. And dragons are comfortably far off. That is why I set out on a burglar, especially when I remembered the existence of a side door. And here is our little Bilbo Baggins, the burglar. The chosen and selected burglar. So now let's get on and make some plans.
Very well. Supposing the burglar gives us some ideas or suggestions.
First, I should like to know a bit more about things. About the gold and the dragon and all that, and how it got there, and who it belongs to, and so on and so forth, please and thank you.
Bless me. Haven't you got a map? And didn't you hear our songs? And haven't we been talking about this for hours?
If it's all the same, I should like to know the plan and have it be clear. And I should like to know about the risks, and the out-of-pocket expenses, and the time required, and so forth.
Very well, Master Baggins. Long ago, in my grandfather Thror's time, our family was driven far north, and they came back with their wealth and their tools to this mountain here on the map. It had been discovered by my far ancestor Thrain the Old, but now they mined and they tunneled and they made huge holes, greater workshops. And in addition, I believe they found a good deal of gold and a great many jewels too. Anyway, they grew immensely rich and famous, and my grandfather was king under the mountain again, and treated with great reverence by mortal men who lived south, and were gradually spreading up the running river as far as the valley overshadowed the mountain. They built the town of Dale there in those days. Kings used to send for our smiths, and reward even the least skillful most richly. Fathers would beg us to take their sons as apprentices, and pay us handsomely, especially in food supplies, which we never bothered to grow or find for ourselves. Altogether, those were good days for us, and the poorest of us had money to spend and to lend, and leisure to make beautiful things just for the fun of it. Not to speak of the most marvelous and magical toys, which not to be found in the world nowadays. So my grandfather's halls became full of armor and tools, and carvings and cups, and the toy market of Dale was wonders of the north. Undoubtedly, that was what brought the dragon. You see, Mr. Baggins, dragons steal gold and jewels, you know, from men and elves and dwarves, whether they find them. And they guard their plunder as long as they live, and never enjoy a brass ring of it. Indeed, they hardly know a good bit of work from bad. Though they usually have a good notion of the current market value, they can't make a thing of it themselves, not even mend a little loose scale on their armor. There were lots of dragons in the north in those days, and gold was probably getting scarce up there, with the dwarves flying south or getting killed, and all the general waste and destruction that dragons make going from bad to worse. There was a most especially greedy, strong, and wicked worm. Smog. One day he flew up into the air and came south. The first we heard of it was a noise like a hurricane coming from the north, and the pine trees on the mountains creaking and cracking in the wind. Some of the dwarves who happened to be outside, well, from a good ways off, we saw a dragon settle on our mountain in a spout of flame. Then he came down the slopes, and when he reached the woods, they all went up in fire. By that time, all the bells were ringing in Dale, and the warriors were arming. The dwarves rushed out the great gate, but there was a dragon waiting for them. None escaped that way. The river rushed up in steam, and a fog fell on Dale, and in the fog the dragon came on them and destroyed most of the warriors. That was only too common in those days. Then he went back and crept through the front gate and routed out all the holes and lanes and tunnels and alleys and cellars. There were no dwarves left alive. A few of us that were outside sat and wept, in hiding, and cursed Smog, and there we were unexpectedly joined by my father and my grandfather with singed beards. They looked very grim, and they said very little. When I asked them how they had gotten away, they told me to hold my tongue, and said that one day, in proper time, I should know. I often wonder about my father and my grandfather's escape. I see now they had a private door, but only they knew about it. And apparently they made a map, and I should like to know how Gandalf got hold of it, and why it did not come down to me, the rightful heir.
I did not get hold of it, I was given it. Your grandfather Thror was killed, you remember this, in the mines of Moria by Aezog the Goblin.
Curse his name.
Yes. Drain, your father, went away on the 21st of April 100 years ago, last Thursday, and has never been seen by since. Your father gave me this to give to you, and if I have chosen my own time and way of handing it over, you can hardly blame me, considering all the trouble I have had finding you. Your father could not remember his own name when he gave me this paper, and he never told me yours. So on the whole, I think I ought to be praised and thanked. So here, this is yours.
I don't understand.
Yes. Your grandfather. And he gave the map to his son for safety before he went to the mines of Moria. Your father went away to try his luck with the map after your grandfather was killed, and lots of adventures of a most unpleasant sort he had. But he never got near the mountain. I don't know how he got there, but when I found him, he was a prisoner in the dungeons of the Necromancer.
What was he doing there?
Never you mind. I was finding things out, as usual, and a nasty, dangerous business it was. Even I, Gandalf, only just escaped. I tried to save your father, but it was too late. He was witless and wandering, and had forgotten almost everything except the map and key.
We have long ago paid the goblins of Moria.
We must give a thought to the necromancer. Don't be absurd, Thorin. He is an enemy far beyond the powers of all the dwarves put together if they could all be collected again from the far corners of the world. The one thing your father wished was for his son to read the map and use the key. The dragon and the mountain are more than big enough tasks for you.
Hear, hear. Hear what, Mr. Baggins? Hear what I've got to say.
And what is that, Mr. Baggins?
Well, I should say that you ought to go east and have a look around. After all, there's a side door, and dragons must sleep sometime, I suppose. If you sit on the doorstep long enough, I dare say you will think of something. And, well, don't you know, I think we have talked long enough for one night. If you see what I mean, what about bedtime and an early start? And that's all. That's really all that. I'll give you a good breakfast before you go, but I think we've talked about it enough, you know.
Before we go, I suppose you mean. Aren't you a burglar, and isn't sitting on the doorstep your job? Not to speak of getting inside the door. But I agree about bed. It's time we're off.
The fire was dying, and it was time to go to sleep. They all got up. The hobbit had to find room for them all, and filled all his spare rooms and made beds on chairs and sofas, before he got them all stowed and went to his own little bed, very tired and not altogether happy. One thing he did make his mind up about was not to bother to get up very early and cook everybody else's wretched breakfast. The tookishness was wearing off, and he was not quite sure what he thought about going on any journey in the morning. As he lay in bed, he could hear Thorin still humming to himself in the best bedroom next to him.